She was my best friend since childhood, the one person I trusted with everything, my secrets, my tears, my laughter, and she's the same woman who betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. My name is Emily, I'm 31, and for most of my life I believed in one unshakable truth. That friendship, real friendship, was forever. I met Rachel when we were 8 years old. We sat next to each other on the first day of 3rd grade, both nervous, both clutching freshly sharpened pencils like life. She had a wild laugh, the kind that turned heads, and I had the kind of shyness that made people look past me. Somehow, we balanced each other. She pulled me into her circle. I steadied her when her fire burned too hot. From then on, we were inseparable. Sleepovers with whispered confessions under glow-in-the-dark stars. Matching bracelets from a summer carnival. Prom dresses chosen together after hours of spinning in dressing rooms. She was the sister I didn't have. Life carried us through college, first jobs, heartbreaks, and victories. When I got promoted at 25, she surprised me with cupcakes and a card that said, "Knew you'd get here first." When she lost her father, I held her in the pew, both of us soaked in grief. Our 20s were stitched together with moments like that proof that loyalty wasn't just a word, it was lived. So when I met Mark, the man who would become my husband, it felt only natural to bring him into our world. He was gentle, steady, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Rachel liked him immediately, teasing me that I'd finally found someone who could match my serious streak. The three of us blended seamlessly. Dinners at our place, weekend hikes, movie nights where Rachel always claimed the middle seat on the couch because you didn't make too much heat when you sit together. We laughed, and it didn't feel strange. She was family. When Mark proposed, Rachel was the first person I called. She screamed so loudly into the phone that I had to hold it away from my ear. She showed up with champagne that night and told Mark, "If you ever hurt her, you'll have me to deal with." We laughed then, too, because it was Rachel bold, protective, dramatic. She was my maid of honor. She helped pick flowers, debated cake flavors, and kept me sane when the details felt like they might drown me. On the wedding day, she stood beside me with tears streaming down her face as I said my vows. Later, she pulled me into a hug and whispered, "I've never seen you this happy. Don't ever let it go." I believed her. I believed everything about us was real and unbreakable. The first year of marriage was exactly what you'd expect, messy and beautiful. We argued about dishes, laughed about nothing, and held each other through long work weeks. Rachel was still there, dripping by with wine on Fridays, joining us for brunch, texting me late at night, with memes only we would find funny. At first, I was grateful that she and Mark got along so well. Isn't that what you want? For your best friend to love your husband, and your husband to see why she matters so much. But looking back, I see the tiny cracks forming even then. The way she lingered in conversations with him, eyes shining a little too brightly. The way his laugh came easier when she was around. I brushed it off. We were all close. That's what closeness looked like. I want you to understand how much trust I carried into this, how much history there was. Because without that, you can't measure the depth of the wound that came later. Rachel wasn't just my best friend. She was part of my identity. She knew me in ways no one else did. And Mark wasn't just my husband. He was the man I chose to share the rest of my life with. The two of them were my constants, my safe places, my anchors. And anchors aren't supposed to drag you under, but they did. And the night I discovered the truth that happened in a room full of people, in the middle of a celebration that should have been filled with joy. The kind of night where betrayal doesn't just shatter you, it humiliates you. Looking back now, it's almost painful to see how blind I was. The signs weren't earthquakes. They were tremors. Small enough to dismiss, but constant enough to warn. It started with time. Rachel had always been a part of my schedule, but after I got married, it was like she became part of our schedule. She'd swing by after work just for a drink, or invite Mark to help her with little errands when I was busy. One afternoon, she texted me. Mark said he'd help me carry a few boxers. Hope that's okay. I smiled, typed back, of course, and thought nothing of it. Because why would I? She is my best friend. He was my husband. Two halves of my world. Then came the inside jokes. The three of us would be watching a movie, and suddenly they'd burst into laughter over something I didn't catch. "What?" I'd ask, smiling. "Nothing," Rachel would say, waving it off, and Mark would grin sheepishly. It seemed harmless, but the more it happened, the more I felt like the third wheel in my own living room. There were the texts to... Rachel had always been a night owl, and I didn't think much of her late night messages. But one night, as I reached for my phone, I noticed Mark's screen light up on the nightstand. Rachel's name, a string of laughing emojis. He locked it quickly when he saw me glance over, Funny meme, he muttered, rolling onto his side. I wanted to believe him, so I did, because that's what trust does, it edits the story for you. Rachel also started making comments that felt strange at brunch. She leaned over and said, "You're so lucky, Emily. He really listens." At a party, when Mark fixed a broken chair, she said, "Where do you find men like this? If I had one like him, I'd never let go." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But the words stuck to me like burrs. Then came the overlap of routines. Rachel had always hated the gym. Suddenly, she was asking Mark for workout tips. "You've got such discipline," she told him, playfully nudging his arm. The next week, she announced she'd joined the same gym. "We can go together," she told me, then quickly added, "Oh, with Mark, since you're not much of a morning person." I brushed it off. But a seed of unease took root. The boundaries blurred further when Rachel started inviting herself to things that used to be just ours. Our date nights at the new Italian place. Rachel would accidentally bump into us, sliding into the booth with a grin. Movie marathons on rainy Saturdays. She'd show up with popcorn. "Hope you don't mind," she'd say, already settling in. And because I loved her, I let it slide. Because what kind of wife complains that her best friend and her husband get along too well? The first time my stomach truly twisted was at my birthday dinner. Rachel gave a toast, glass raised high. She went on and on about how much she loved me, how I'd been her anchor since childhood. But then she turned to Mark and said, "And thank you for taking care of her the way she deserves. You're a rare one." The room clapped. Mark smiled modestly. I forced a grin. But something about the way her eyes lingered on him made my chest tighten. Even family started to notice. My cousin pulled me aside at a barbecue and said, half joking, "Rachel and Mark, sure, are close." I laughed it off, waved it away. She's practically family. But later, I saw them across the yard, heads bent together over the grill, laughing at something I wasn't part of, and I felt it again, that pinch, that whisper that something was off. The real turning point came one evening when I got home early from work. I opened the door to find Rachel in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. Mark stood beside her, chopping vegetables. They looked up, startled, like teenagers caught sneaking in after curfew. "Hey," Rachel said quickly, too brightly. I thought I'd help with dinner. I forced a smile, but my mind raced. She had a key to my house, of course she did. She'd had one for years. But standing there in my kitchen cooking dinner with my husband before I even got home, it felt like a line had been crossed. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that my best friend and my husband wouldn't betray me. Because if I admitted otherwise, it would mean questioning the two people who defined my life, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. But denial only works until reality kicks the door in. And mine came crashing down at an event that was supposed to be filled with joy and evening, where I learned the truth in front of everyone. The night of the discovery started like a celebration. It was a charity gala hosted by Mark's company, and he wanted me there by his side. I spent the afternoon getting ready, curling my hair, slipping into a dress that felt elegant but safe. The kind of dress you wear when you want to make your husband proud. Rachel insisted she come along. She said she wanted to support us both. And as always, I agreed. Why wouldn't I? She had been part of every milestone in my life. The ballroom sparkled with golden lights, tables draped in white, glasses clinking in polite rhythms. Mark looked handsome in his suit, charming as he shook hands with colleagues. Rachel dazzled, too, in a red dress that drew eyes the second she walked in. She stuck close, smiling at everyone, acting as though she belonged there. At first, it felt normal. We mingled, we laughed, we toasted. But as the evening wore on, I noticed something. Mark and Rachel drifted into their own orbit. When I was speaking to someone from HR, I'd glance over and see her touching his arm lightly as she laughed at his jokes. When I excused myself to the restroom, I came back to find them leaning in close, heads tilted toward each other like conspirators. I told myself it was harmless. They were just talking. They had known each other almost as long as Mark had known me. But deep inside, something cold started to grow. Halfway through the night, I realized I hadn't seen him in several minutes. I scanned the room, smiling politely as people passed, my heart beating a little too fast. Finally, my cousin Leah approached and asked if I was okay. I said yes, but she leaned in and whispered, "I think I just saw Mark and Rachel head toward the terrace." The words landed like a stone in my stomach. I walked through the crowd, every step heavy. The terrace doors were half open, cool night air spilling in. I slipped outside, my heels clicking against the stone floor. And there they were. Rachel stood close to Mark, her hand on his chest, his head bent toward hers. The sound of laughter floated between them, but it wasn't the kind of laughter friends share. It was softer, intimate, private. Before I could speak, she tilted her face up, and he kissed her. Not a quick peck, not an accident. A real kiss, deliberate, like it had been practiced in stolen moments before this one. For a second, my body froze. My mind couldn't compute what my eyes were seeing. This was Rachel. This was Mark, my best friend, my husband. Rachel's eyes opened mid-kiss, and she saw me. The color drained from her face, but she didn't move. Mark pulled back slowly, then turned. His expression shifted from guilt to panic. "Emily," he whispered, as if my name might undo what I had just seen. I felt the weight of the moment pressing in. The laughter from inside, the music drifting from the ballroom, the night sky overhead, and me standing on the threshold of a life that had just cracked apart. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. I wanted to run, but my feet rooted to the ground. All I could do was stare, my breath shallow, my chest burning. Rachel stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Emily, please." It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like. The oldest line in the book. I almost laughed, but the sound stuck in my throat. Mark reached out a hand. "We were going to tell you." "I swear we were." Tell me what?" "That my best friend had been slipping into the cracks of my marriage. That the two people I trusted most had been building a secret world together while smiling in my face." I turned, forcing my legs to move. I walked back inside, vision blurred, ignoring the curious stares as I passed. My cousin caught my arm, but I shook her off. I grabbed my purse, found my coat, and left. The cold air outside bit into my skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold inside me. That night, I drove home in silence. My phone buzzed again and again, their names flashing across the screen, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. I sat in the driveway, staring at the house that had once been my safe place, knowing it would never feel the same again. The betrayal wasn't just the kiss. It was the history behind it. Every inside joke, every touch, every laugh I had brushed off. It all led here, and now the picture was complete. The people I had trusted with my life had stolen pieces of it when I wasn't looking, and they hadn't even cared enough to hide it well. That night, I realized something cruel. Sometimes betrayal doesn't sneak up quietly. Sometimes it shows up in red lipstick and a black suit on a terrace under the stars, daring you to deny what your own eyes have witnessed. When I woke up the next morning, the night before replayed like a broken reel in my head. The terrace, their faces, that kiss. I wanted it to be a nightmare, something I could shake off with coffee and a shower. But when I looked at my phone, the dozens of missed calls and messages reminded me it was all real. Rachel had texted me first. "Emily, please let me explain. You know I love you. You're my sister. Last night was a mistake. Please talk to me, sister." That word stabbed deeper than the betrayal itself. Mark's messages came next. "Emily, we need to talk. I don't want to lose you. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. Please come home." But he was home. The house we shared was his home too. The thought of walking inside and seeing him there made my chest tighten. I stayed at my cousin Leah's for the weekend. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me tea and sat with me in silence. Sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is not fill the air with words. By Sunday night, Mark showed up at Leah's door. "Please, Emily," he said, his voice breaking. "Can we talk?" Against every instinct screaming at me to slam the door, I stepped outside. He looked wrecked, eyes red, hair a mess. But still, I couldn't forget the image of his lips on hers. "I made a mistake," he said quickly, hands out like he was... "It was one kiss. It won't happen again." I was drunk, caught up in the moment. "You have to believe me." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "One kiss? Do you really think I me that stupid? Do you think I didn't see the months of laughing, the secrets, the little looks? That wasn't a kiss, Mark. That was a confession." His face crumpled. He reached for me, but I stepped back. "She's my best friend," I whispered, my voice shaking. "You didn't just betray me. You took her too. Do you understand that?" He bowed his head. "I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I love you, Emily. I do. Please, don't let this end us." I wanted to scream at him, but I couldn't. Rage and grief had twisted together into something heavier than either alone. I turned and walked back inside. He didn't follow. Rachel was next. She showed up uninvited on Monday morning, standing on Leah's porch with her hair tied back and her face pale. please, she said, clutching her hands together. Just let me explain. Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table the same way we had sat for decades, homework, gossip, heartbreaks, except this time, the space between us was poisoned. She took a deep breath. Emily, I didn't plan this. I swear, I never wanted to hurt you. You're the most important person in my life. Then why? My voice cracked. Why him? Tears filled her eyes. Because he saw me. Because when I was with him, I didn't feel invisible. I know it's wrong. I know it's unforgivable. But I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. Invisible. That word rang in my ears. For years, I had centered her, celebrated her, carried her pain as if it were my own. And still, she wanted more. You could have had anyone, I said, my fists clenched. Anyone! And you chose my husband? She cried harder. I was jealous, Emily, of you, of the love you had. I wanted what you had. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself it was okay to take a piece of it. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I stared at her. The girl who had once braided friendship bracelets with me under the summer sun. The woman who stood beside me at my wedding, swearing she'd always protect me. Now she was the thief who had stolen my peace. Get out, I whispered. She tried to grab my hand, but I pulled it away. Emily, please, don't throw away 20 years of friendship. I laughed bitterly. You threw it away the second you touched him. She left sobbing, and I sat in silence until the clock struck noon. The weeks after blurred into survival. I went back to the house eventually, packed a bag for myself, left papers on the counter for Mark DeVos's papers. He didn't fight. He signed them with shaking hands, muttered apologies, promises that felt like dust in the air. Rachel tried a few more times. Sex, voicemails, even letters. Each one said the same thing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. You're my sister. Please forgive me. But forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out like candy. It's a bridge, and they had burned it to ash. The hardest part wasn't losing Mark. It was losing Rachel. Because love can be rebuilt, marriages can end, and you can find someone new. But a best friend, the kind who holds decades of your history, that's a loss you don't replace. Even now, when I think back, it isn't just betrayal I feel. It's grief. Like a funeral for something that was supposed to last forever. In the end, everything fell apart quietly. No screaming fights, no grand confrontations, just paperwork signed, keys returned, and friendships buried. Mark moved out within weeks. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't care. The man I thought I married had dissolved into someone I couldn't recognize, and chasing answers felt like chasing smoke. Rachel disappeared too, at least from my world. Maybe she found comfort in someone else's circle. Maybe she tried to stitch together a new life out of the pieces of mine she broke. I don't know. I don't want to know. What I do know is that I had to start again. Alone at first, the silence of my home was unbearable. Every corner held memories of them, echoes of laughter that once felt safe. But slowly, silence became a kind of healing. I filled it with my own voice, my own choices, my own company. I lost a husband, but I also lost the illusion of loyalty. And maybe in some twisted way, that was necessary, because now I know that trust isn't something to hand out blindly, even to the people who swear they'd never hurt you, especially them. So now I'll leave you with this. If you were in my place, would you ever forgive a best friend who betrayed you with your husband?